black better. Here.
There are many extreme religious practices and rituals out there, but there may be none more extreme than the Buddhist monk practice of Shokusenbutsu. This brutal ritual was created in 835 AD, and since then, over 1,000 years, countless monks have tried to do it. However, only 24 have ever actually been successful.
Damn.
Today, I'm going to walk you through the 3 phases of this ritual, and at the end, I'm going to show you pictures of what a successful Shokusenbutsu looks like. However, be warned, the images are very disturbing, so viewer discretion is advised.
This is the successful
but before we get into that
pictures
story,
of it.
If you're a fan
disturbing.
of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So, if that's of interest to you, the next time the like button is counting something really important, start shouting out random numbers to mess them up. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly
curse
uploads.
words
Okay, let's get into today's story.
Metamorphosis.
Buddhists believe that human life is a constant cycle of birth, suffering, and then death. And then you're reborn, you suffer again, you die again, over and over and over again, forever, unless you're able to achieve enlightenment or nirvana, as it's called.
Well, this
However, no one really knows what nirvana actually is, what it looks like, what it feels like, where it is.
Early 90s
Buddhists will say that the only way to actually understand nirvana is to experience it yourself. It's kind of like trying to describe to someone what chocolate tastes like. You can use any number of superlatives to describe the flavor, but until that person bites a piece of chocolate, they won't really fully understand it. And so, the goal of all Buddhists is to try to attain nirvana. And every day, hundreds of millions of Buddhists all around the world try very hard to do just that. But within Buddhism, there is a small subset of practitioners who have effectively dedicated their entire existence to attaining nirvana. And these people are the famous Buddhist monks. It is extremely difficult to become a Buddhist monk because the sacrifice is enormous. You have to leave your family, your friends, society, all your possessions, your name, your status, everything, and go live in a monastery, which is a kind of isolated place where monks live, and there you will spend your life living this very simple, very strict religious life where basically all you do is try to attain nirvana. As a result of this extreme lifestyle that Buddhist monks live, they have developed a reputation for being some of the most disciplined people on the planet. But even by Buddhist monk standards, their sacred ritual of Shokusenbutsu takes discipline to a whole nother level. Last week, our company decided that we needed to hire a graphic designer, and so I got tasked with finding candidates. Now, I got no idea how to do that, and so naturally, I went on Google and I looked up, where can I find good graphic designer candidates? But I accidentally wrote malnourished, angry saltwater crocodiles instead of good graphic designer candidates.
Yeah, I can see I didn't get that mixed up.
But because I didn't catch it, before long, me and old Singo Lung were stuck up in northern Australia up to our lacrimal puncta in Crocodilus porosus. Now, of course, me and Lung did our best to try to calm these beasts down and try to teach them graphic design to make the most of this work trip. But these salties were just not that interested in graphic design, and they lacked basic finger dexterity. Yeah. And so, it was as we were sitting up in this tree, hiding from this bask of angry salties down below, that old Lung jumped up and threw a javelin directly into my heart and said, "Apa miertnem hesnalod ZipRecruiter," which of course in Hungarian means, "Dad, why didn't you just use ZipRecruiter?" And boy, was old Lungy right. ZipRecruiter uses its powerful technology to both find and match the right candidate candidates to your job. ZipRecruiter also has a user-friendly dashboard with a full suite of tools that will allow you to filter, review, and rate your applicants all in one place. And now, with the invite to apply feature, it lets you immediately access a list of candidates with qualifications that match your job description. See a candidate who'd be perfect for your job? ZipRecruiter makes it easy to send a personal invite to them and other top choices. See how much easier hiring is with ZipRecruiter, which is the #1 rated hiring site according to G2 satisfaction ratings as of January 1st, 2022. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. And now you can try ZipRecruiter for free by going to ZipRecruiter.com/MrBallin. Again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/MrBallin. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Okay, back to the story.
Wait a minute, you gotta pay for ZipRecruiter now? It used to be free.
Sokushinbutsu was created over 1,000 years ago up in the rugged mountains of northern Japan by a sect of Buddhists called the Shingon. And the Shingon believed that you could attain nirvana through physical punishment. And out of that idea was born the incredibly brutal Sokushinbutsu ritual. In short, Buddhist monks can choose to participate in this ritual, and if they successfully complete it, they might attain nirvana. But they won't know until the ritual is over. Meaning, it's kind of like a big gamble. Put yourself through absolute hell, and maybe you have this huge payoff, but maybe not. However, trying to attain nirvana through other means was really difficult. There was no other really clear pathways to nirvana, and so having this one distinct pathway, no matter how difficult it was really appealing. And so since its creation, hundreds and hundreds of Buddhist monks have tried it. And maybe less than 100 have actually successfully completed it. And then of that 100 or less, only 24 have actually attained nirvana through this process. The instructions for Sokushinbutsu are actually quite simple. There are 3 phases. Phase 1 is called Moku Jikagayo, which roughly means tree-eating training, and it's primarily focused on the monk's diet. It takes 1,000 days to complete this phase. However, most monks go much longer than 1,000 days. During this phase, monks will only eat byproducts of trees, things like seeds, nuts, tree bark, tree roots, pine needles, and they will collect all this food on their own. It should be noted, though, that some monks in this first phase will ingest small rocks. This is likely done because they are starving and they can't find food, and by eating the rocks take up space in their stomach and kind of curb their appetite a little bit, but because they don't actually digest the rocks, they're not technically breaking the phase 1 diet restrictions, and so they can continue on with this ritual. Additionally, during this first phase, the monks adhere to a very involved and strenuous physical exercise routine, and then whenever they're not foraging for food or exercising, they...
So you're not getting really any nutrients. Also, you got to do a strenuous exercise routine. Like, no wonder only 24 people. I'm surprised everybody has a fucking diet. Like, he got on gloves, a cold up there. Like, no, you can't have that. Y'all got to be like One Punch Man. Y'all got no air conditioner in the summer and no heat in the winter.
Are meditating. At the end of the 1,000th day of phase 1, if the monk has survived, because sometimes phase 1 monks do die mostly from starvation, it is up to them if they are ready to move on to phase 2. This decision ultimately comes down to whether or not, 1, the monk actually adhered to the strict rules of phase 1, something really only that monk would know, and then 2, whether or not the monk actually believes they are spiritually ready to move on to phase 2. Phase 2 is much shorter than phase 1, but it is significantly more challenging. And so the monks going into phase 2, they really need to kind of bring their A game and have no second thoughts. They need to be fully committed to phase 2 in order to successfully complete it. For reference, most of the 24 monks who successfully attained nirvana through this ritual repeated phase 1, 2, or even 3 times just to make sure they really were ready. Phase 2 is called Nyojo, and it roughly translates to deep meditation. But a better way to think about what this phase entails is these monks need to enter into a sort of trance-like state, almost like an out-of-body experience, because what they're going to go through in this phase is so physically uncomfortable that unless you're able to kind of detach mentally, there's just no way to go through with it. And so during the second phase, the monks will sit down and meditate basically constantly for 100 straight days.
I think I've heard of this.
They don't eat any more tree byproducts or rocks. Instead, they have a liquid diet. They drink a little bit of salt water, and they drink a lot of a very particular kind of tea. The tea is made from Toxicodendron verniculum tree bark, which contains the same toxin in poison ivy. Meaning, for phase 2, you basically just sit alone by yourself for 100 days while simultaneously drinking a poisonous tea that causes a massive allergic reaction inside of your throat and stomach that causes an intense itching sensation inside of you that you cannot physically itch. Also, this poisonous tea gives you explosive diarrhea and it makes you vomit a lot. If you somehow manage to survive all 100 days of phase 2, and unfortunately, many...
If he didn't say that this was monks, I would assume that this was like some sadist type shit. Like somebody was capturing people and like this is all the food they was giving them. And then made them like, hey, you gotta drink this tea that has the same like effects as poison ivy and is inside your body, so you can't scratch anything. And it gives you explosive diarrhea and makes you throw. How do you meditate? You just sitting there meditating. No wonder they like you gotta do this by yourself. You will be shitting and pissing and throwing up. So you got to go in a room. Oh, like we got special rooms that are far away from the monastery that you could do this because it's gonna smell awful. Like, oh man, I can't. Man, if I did this and didn't get like first class seat in, I guess whatever, hereafter, whatever, I would be. I guess at that point, what you gonna do is like you sit somewhere like purgatory, like a purgatory is just gray and nothing. I'm like, ain't this some shit? I went through all that, became a monk, gave up all my worldly possessions to just live on the bare minimum and meditate all day, and then went through this trial and didn't get shit. Like
monks don't, you automatically move on to phase 3. Unlike phase 1, phase 2 never gets repeated, most likely because it almost certainly would be fatal to do so. Phase 3 is either the easiest or the hardest part of the Sokushin Bitsu ritual, depending on how you look at it.
I guess
it doesn't have a name like the other 2 phases, perhaps because so few people make it to this part of the ritual. But regardless, phase 3 definitely has a strict set of rules like the other 2 phases. The phase 3 monk has a small pine box that has no windows built just for them. It needs to be big enough that they can sit inside of it in the lotus pose, which is how they typically sit when they're meditating. And then once it's all built, the monk climbs into this box. They put a lid over the top of it,
I've seen
but
this.
they put a bamboo shoot, like a bamboo pole, through the cover of this box, so there is a breathing tube for this monk inside of this box. And then they lower the monk inside of the small pine box 10 feet into this hole in the ground, and then once they ensure the bamboo pole is going to be above ground so they can breathe, they fill the hole in with charcoal. Before we cover what happens next in Phase 3, you need some context about what this ritual is actually doing to the monks performing it. Phase 1, tree eating training, serves two purposes. The first is it's kind of like a big gut check. It really shows who wants to do this ritual and who doesn't. It's kind of like if you can't complete Phase 1, you certainly can't complete Phase 2 or Phase 3. So it's like a filter. It weeds out the weak monks. The second purpose of Phase 1 is to literally shrink the monk. The tree-eating diet, combined with the constant physical exercise, removes all of their body fat and a lot of their muscle, and so they're incredibly lean by the end of Phase 1. And this will be significant when we talk about the end of Phase 3. Phase 2, deep meditation phase, serves two purposes as well. The first purpose is that it puts the monk into that trance-like state, and then the second purpose it serves is the toxin inside of this poisonous tea kills off all of the naturally occurring bacteria and parasites inside of the monk. Again, that will become significant when we get to the end of Phase 3. Speaking of which, so in Phase 3, the monk is put in their box, they're lowered 10 feet into the ground, the breathing bamboo shoot is installed, the charcoal is dumped on top of them, and then for several days, the third phase monk will sit in total darkness and meditate constantly, and each day, they have a bell down there with them, they ring the bell. That's the only thing they have to do besides meditate. And above ground, there is a team of monks that are supporting this ritual, and they're listening for that bell. And the first day they don't hear the bell, it means the monk in the box has completed the ritual, and now it is time to see if they have attained nirvana. In Buddhism, someone whose body does not decay, aka a mummy, is someone who has cheated death. And to cheat death is to remove yourself from the vicious human life cycle of birth, suffering, death, repeat. Meaning, becoming a mummy is a way to attain nirvana. And Sokushin Butsu is a self-mummification ritual. Phase 1 shrinks the monk's body, it removes their fat and muscle, it also removes a lot of moisture inside of their body, and their diet also withholds nutrients to all of the bacteria and parasites that naturally occur inside of their bodies. And so those bacteria and parasites that normally would play a big role in helping decompose your body after death begin to die off. And so the cumulative effect of Phase 1 on these monks is that if they were to die at the end of Phase 1, their decomposition would be drastically slowed. It wouldn't be mummy status, but it would be close. The Phase 2 poisonous tea, that toxin that they're drinking, that kills off the remainder of the bacteria and parasites that did not die during Phase 1. Also, all the vomiting and diarrhea completely dehydrates them, which aids in slowing down decomposition after death. Finally, Phase 3 is the death phase. The monk goes into their tomb, they're buried underground, and they ring that bell each day to tell the people on the ground that they are still alive. And then when the bell stops ringing, it means the monk in the box is dead. At which point, the crew on the ground removes the bamboo breathing pole and then lets the body sit in the box underground for another 1,000 days. And then after 1,000 days, they pull the box up, they lift the lid off, and if there is little to no signs of decay on their body, it means the self-mummification ritual worked, they're a mummy, they've attained nirvana, and now their body is holy. And so they're brought out of the box, they're dressed in robes, they're placed in the monasteries, and they are worshipped. As for the unlucky monks who get to the end of Sokushin Butsu, but are found to be decomposing inside of their box when they're brought back up again, they're just placed back inside of their pine box and buried, and they are not worshipped. Sokushin Butsu was made illegal in Japan in the late 19th century, but we know monks continued to practice it into the 20th century, and in theory, today, monks still might practice it in secret.
Wow.
So that's going to do it. If you got something out of today's episode and you haven't done this already.
Like, that sounds familiar. Like, I think I've heard of this before. But that's, like, because I'm like, oh, okay, when you get up, if you, I thought this was like just a whole endurance test. And you just go through it, and if you live, then you you like reached nirvana. But cause I'm like, how do you know? I guess then they explanation is you reached nirvana because you didn't decompose. You basically mummified yourself. So that's how we know you reached nirvana. If you if you didn't reach nirvana, it basically said you didn't do it. You didn't do the other steps right because all this is you doing it on your own, except for the third test, which is just people waiting to hear the bell ring, and as soon as they don't hear the bell ring, then they know you're dead. I was like, won't you? I was like, in that case, won't you just wait? Why even have monks sit there and wait for the bell to, unless you can quit? But because I was like, in that case, if you at stage three, at that point, they're like, this is the death that you're going to die regardless, whether you reach nirvana or not. So like, why even have monks there listening for the bell? Just like, hey, just wait. This person's already dehydrated. It has no nutrients in their body anymore because they've been eating shrubs and rocks and pine needles and shit. So they already shrunk down, and their body's already digesting. It's digested all the fat. Now it's digesting the muscle, and then they drink tea that pushes even more of the liquid out of their body, make them throw up and shit themselves and all that. And you're supposed to meditate. I feel like that stage ain't nobody meditate because you're too busy shitting and throwing up and just expelling liquids out of all your orifices. And then the third stage, you go in this box. And he said they put, he didn't say coal. He said, they put, what the fuck did he say? He said they put something in the box with you, and which, well, I guess would dry your skin out. I can't remember what he said. He didn't say embers, like no, he said charcoal. He said charcoal. Well, he put something in it to make sure it dries the skin out, and then, but then if you been like I said, you didn't do something right. I guess you didn't get rid of all the parasites or whatever in your body, and there's still something in there to create the decomposition process. Then like, oh, you just bury you and just whatever. But this person gonna be this mummy is gonna be worshipped. I'm like, this is suicide. Like, I was like, that's what I was like when they got to that point. He said they ring the bell and they listen for the bell until they don't hear it anymore. When he said that, I'm like, this sounds like suicide. Like they killing themselves. So life is they just like, well, I guess they believe in reincarnation. So they're like, well, it's just a cycle of birth, suffering, death, birth, suffering, death. Like two, so you don't go through that anymore. I guess you stop the reincarnation process and you just go into nirvana. And I don't know if like I don't know exactly how they believe it. I don't know if they believe it, like the soul or spirit, wherever it leaves now, and you can go off into some paradise or something. You don't have to come back and be reincarnated again and go through this again. Because it seems like that's what they're trying to stop. Because you keep talking about you're going to keep going through the cycle of life and suffering and death, then it seems like you're trying to break that cycle. It kind of reminds me of that movie. I only watched it once. I might fuck up the story, but I think it's called. Mark Wahlberg was in it, and Chiwetel Ejiofor for was as Immortal. I think it was where certain people are immortals. I don't remember. Like I said, I only saw the movie once. I was thinking about doing a reaction to it because it's not a great movie. It's it's okay. It's not. I wouldn't even say it's good. It's like okay. Some of the stuff, the premise of it, I thought was interesting, but and True to Edge for was great. And I do think they probably should have cast somebody other than Mark Wahlberg, but because Mark Wahlberg's cool and stuff, but it's just certain things. It's like they cast him just because he's Mark Wahlberg, and I think he was miscast in that. But and True to Edge kind of remind me of the character he played in Serenity, only because he uses a sword in this movie. That's it. Plus, he was like the coolest villain. I remember watching Serenity, and I was like, that's the first time I saw True to Edge for, and I was like, I don't know why I say his whole name, but that was the first time I remember ever seeing him, and I was like, this dude was so cool. And I watched that. I could rented it, and I was like, what's this? Because I didn't know anything about Firefly, and I didn't watch that. I didn't watch Firefly until I think when I watched, I didn't watch that. I still haven't watched the entire first season of that. Or I guess the only season of that. But I think I was. I know it was. Had to be the early 2010s, maybe the late, maybe like '08 or '09 or something like that. But and I remember looking. No, it was. But I saw Serenity. I didn't know that movie had anything to do with that show. I didn't know that show existed. But that dude was so cool in that. Actually, I think that was the first time I remember seeing Nathan Fillion as well. Um, but he was so cool, and I was like, man, I just kept watching that movie over and over every day until I had to take it back after the 5 days. Well, on the fifth day. But he's kind of like he reminds me of that character in that, except in this movie, certain I guess people are immortals where they reincarnate every time and they when they die, and some of them reincarnate differently than others. Like I know uh, Chuatel. I'm trying to say just his first name. Uh, like when he reincarnated, he would be conscious in the womb. So like his was because he was like he wanted to stop the whole process of being reincarnated and actually like destroy the earth and stuff like that. So nobody else, I guess, would no other beings like them would come about. I guess, and which I was like, okay, this is extreme. I get it that you being reincarnated because he basically had lost his mind. He's like you don't because it was he was talking to somebody. He's like when you reincarnate, you don't become aware of your past life until you like they said like around age like 6 or something for that particular person. He said, but me, I'm like he said, I gain my memory back in the womb, my consciousness in the womb. Is I'm in there in complete darkness for months, and then he gets born and stuff like that. And he goes through life, and then apparently like because they remember everything about their past lives. I can't remember if everyone gets reincarnated or it's just certain ones who reincarnate that actually remember who they were. And because I remember one woman she got reincarnated, he was apparently married to a few lives ago, and she get when she got reincarnated, she had some like I think she had like MS or something like that, and he was like, he was talking to he's oh what cruel joke or something has played God has played on you something like that, and because I was like she could just kill herself and get reincarnated again, but like because she was old at this point, and and she had that I think she was, has been like I said I only saw it once, but it reminds me of that. Like they did, he's trying to like these monks I mean they want to be I guess they want to be worshipped, but they're trying to stop the process of reincarnation into just suffering. So they get to level nirvana, and I guess the people, I guess they had the people alive had to like, well, we gotta. How do we know they reached nirvana if they're dead? They can't tell us. It's not like someone. Well, I reached pure enlightenment and they still alive and they tell you that they reached pure enlightenment. I mean, anybody can say anything, but it's like, oh well, since the body is went through mummification, then that is our how we know that they reached nirvana. And it's just like that's it's just hey, everybody got their beliefs. So I ain't here to shit on nobody. I just like that's it's just like killing yourself for that. It reminds me like in Japanese culture where they would in feudal Japan stuff where they would any type of dishonor the only way to bring honor back to their family is to kill themselves. So commit seppuku. So I'm like it just kind of great. Like how many people would have gone off and done maybe great things or maybe horrible things. You never know. But if they hadn't, something would have happened. They killed themselves. It just. I mean, it's just like anything with people. But I'm talking about actual, like it's in your culture to like, well, it's deemed honorable. I ain't talking about like now as people kill themselves for any number of reasons. But I'm talking about like anything happens like, oh, I brought dishonor to my family by doing this. I need to now kill myself to bring honor back. I'm like, can't you do that another way? Maybe you could bring honor back to your family and be alive. Because I'm like, it felt like to me you just removed yourself from the situation. It's like one of those things where, like some like samurai would commit seppuku so that if they did something like against like a feudal lord or shogun or whatever, or the emperor, and they like, we'll kill, not only torture you, but we'll torture your whole family. But if you kill yourself, then we won't torture them. So now you like, well, you going off this person's word because this person could theoretically they could still torture and kill your family. But it's like, well, you agree to it. You agree to kill yourself, and that will bring honor back to your family. So we won't kill them, or we won't, take all your possessions because it's like samurais like knights. They get them money and land and stuff like that. So we won't take that from them if you kill yourself. It's like that I could understand more than the samurai just making a choice and just doing it. Like I brought this on my family. If I kill myself, that'd be fine. But I was like, I'd rather be like the yakuza and just fucking just chop a finger. just don't fuck up too much because you ain't gonna have any fingers left. So, and to be like, oh, I need to kill myself. You fucked up once, kill yourself, and I will assist you. So as you stab yourself and drag it across your stomach, I'm gonna cut your head off at the same time. You disembowel yourself, and I cut your head off. But anyway, hope you enjoyed my reaction. And if you did, make sure to hit that thumbs up button down below. Make sure to subscribe if you're here. Hit that bell if you want to be notified when I upload new videos. Comment down below. Share this video. I'll see y'all next time. Peace.